The Bold and the Beautiful, a tragedy ignited by jealousy in the glittering world of Los Angeles, where secrets are currency and emotions run as deep as the designer cuts. The latest twist in The Bold and the Beautiful sets a new bar for high-stakes drama and ruthless ambition. At the center of it all stands Luna, once a background player in the glamorous chaos, now stepping fully into the role of antagonist not by accident, but by calculated, burning rage. The catalyst was Electra. Beautiful, composed, and unwavering in her loyalty, Electra had endured what would have shattered many, the revelation that her lover, Will, had betrayed her by sleeping with another woman. Most would expect her to leave him, to sever the bond and move on. But Electra, ever enigmatic, chose forgiveness. That singular decision, her quiet strength, her ability to still see love in the aftermath of betrayal, was like acid poured over Luna's hopes. For months, Luna had imagined herself beside Will. She had convinced herself that time, proximity, and Will's growing disillusionment with Electra would inevitably bring him to her. She had even allowed herself to believe that pregnancy might seal her fate with him, tie them together forever. But the one thing she craved most, a baby with Will, never came. Her obsession grew deeper, her envy sharper. And when Will chose to stay loyal to Electra, even after his mistake, Luna's dreams turned to ashes. And so, she struck a match. It wasn't impulsive. It wasn't a breakdown. It was cold. Strategic. A midnight visit to Electra's apartment, tucked away under cover of darkness. No words, no confrontation. Just gasoline. Just fire. The act itself was silent, but its message screamed louder than anything Luna had ever said. She didn't just want Electra out of the picture, she wanted her erased. Inside the apartment, Electra had been spending the night with Ivy, her closest friend and confidant, trying to rebuild, trying to believe that love could still be enough. They never saw the flames until it was too late. The fire spread with terrifying speed, engulfing the walls, choking the air, turning furniture into fuel. Their screams were swallowed by the inferno. There was no escape, no last-minute rescue, no second chances. When the fire department arrived, it was already over. The flames had been tamed, but the damage was irreversible. 2 bodies were pulled from the wreckage. The press was relentless. The headlines brutal. But for Will, the world simply stopped. He received the call in the early morning. A single moment that shattered his world. Electra gone. Ivy gone. Just like that. No warning. No goodbye. The woman who had forgiven him. Who had fought for them. Who had still seen beauty in a man who had betrayed her. Dead. Taken in a blaze that no one could yet explain. Luna, meanwhile, returned to the home she shared with Lee. Calm. Composed. The stench of smoke washed off her skin, the evidence hidden beneath layers of control and silence. She said nothing. She watched the news like everyone else. She even offered condolences, playing the grieving friend, the shocked acquaintance. But in the quiet of her room, away from the world's gaze, she allowed herself a moment of triumph. She had done what no one else could, remove Electra from Will's life. But what Luna didn't expect was the ripple effect of her own actions. The guilt didn't touch her, not yet. But suspicion is a dangerous thing. The fire investigators began to probe. What had caused the fire? Why was it so aggressive? Was it an accident or something more? And while Luna may have covered her tracks well, fire leaves behind more than ashes. It leaves patterns, evidence, traces, and someone was bound to start connecting the dots. Will, shattered by the loss, began pulling away from the world. He retreated into himself, haunted by the memories of Electra, her laugh, her touch, the way she looked at him even after the betrayal. None of it made sense. Why her? Why now? As the funeral loomed, the reality of her death began to sink in. It wasn't just the loss of a lover, it was the loss of a future, of redemption, of peace. And yet Luna waited. She believed the path to Will was finally clear. That in his grief, he would turn to her. That he would need comfort. that she could slide into the space Electra left behind and fill the void. But grief doesn't follow logic, and love doesn't obey manipulation. Will didn't turn to Luna. He shut everyone out. Still, Luna tried. She showed up at his door with food, with kind words, with memories of Electra to share, as if proximity and patience would bring her closer to him. But Will barely acknowledged her. He was hollow, distant, unreachable. And something in Luna began to crack. She had given up everything, her morals, her soul, for this man. She had committed the unthinkable, convinced it would bind him to her. But instead of reward, there was silence. Meanwhile, the investigation into the fire intensified. The arson unit confirmed accelerants had been used. Gasoline. A deliberate act. A crime. And once that word was spoken, arson, the tone of the story shifted. This wasn't a tragedy. It was a homicide. Detectives began to interview people in Electra's circle. Who might have wanted her dead? Who stood to gain? Who had motives buried beneath smiles? Ivy's family pushed for answers. Electra's parents hired private investigators. The media ran wild. And Luna's name, mentioned only in whispers, slowly began to surface. Some remembered the way she looked at Will. Others recalled the tension between her and Electra at previous events. A heated exchange at a fundraiser. A snide remark caught on video. Nothing definitive, but enough to raise questions. Enough for the police to start watching her. Still, Luna clung to her version of control. She had gotten away with it. She had destroyed the woman who stood between her and love. But she had underestimated how tightly the past clings. Electra may have died in that fire, but her story wasn't finished. A hidden security camera in a neighboring building, long forgotten, had captured a shadow moving near Electra's apartment around the time of the fire. The footage was grainy, but the silhouette was unmistakably female. The timestamp aligned perfectly with when the fire began. The footage wasn't enough to convict yet, but it was enough to shift the investigation into overdrive. As the walls began to close in, Luna's behavior changed. She became erratic. Her once calm demeanor began to fray. She picked fights with Lee. She lashed out at Will when he continued to reject her. And in her desperation, she made a crucial mistake. She returned to the scene of the crime, late one night, as if drawn to the ruins she had created. A patrol officer spotted her wandering near the taped-off building. She claimed she was there to leave flowers, but her story didn't match up. The time, the route she took, the surveillance, all of it began to paint a picture that no longer protected her. Eventually, Will was brought in for questioning, not as a suspect, but as someone who might know more than he realized. And as he sat across from the detectives, hearing the details of what they believed happened, that the fire was no accident, that someone had meant to kill Electra, something inside him shifted. He thought back to Luna, her sudden kindness, her presence after the fire, her silence when asked about that night. It clicked. The betrayal was no longer just his own. It had spread. It had cost lives. And now, justice demanded its due. The story of Electra and Ivy's death wasn't a random tragedy. It was the result of obsession, of envy wrapped in silk and perfume. It was Luna's doing. And while she believed she had won, the truth had already begun its slow, steady march toward her doorstep. The bold and the beautiful has never shied away from drama, but this arc may be its most explosive yet. With fire, loss, and twisted love, the show reminds us once again, in a world built on beauty, what's hiding beneath the surface can burn everything to the ground. As the investigation into the fire that killed Electra and Ivy intensified, the city held its breath. The media called it a tragedy, but the police had stopped using that word. To them, this wasn't just a case of faulty wiring or careless cooking. It was deliberate, calculated murder. Detectives were piecing together timelines, interviewing friends, and cross-referencing security footage. And through it all, one name kept reappearing like a shadow at the edge of the crime scene: Luna. What Luna didn't know, what she couldn't have known, was that she had left behind something. Not fingerprints, not DNA. She had been meticulous about those. But fire is a messy beast, and smoke has a way of clinging to more than walls. Investigators had found the melted remains of a cheap plastic gas can outside the back exit of Electra's building, behind the trash bins. The kind you get at a gas station, burnt nearly beyond recognition. But not entirely. Part of the handle had survived, and stuck to it, partially fused from the heat, was a smudged store label. They traced it to a convenience store 3 blocks away. A receipt time-stamped just 22 minutes before the fire had been logged. Paid in cash. No name. But and here was the break: there were cameras in the store. Grainy, yes, but good enough to make out the profile of a woman with long dark hair, sunglasses despite the late hour, and a hoodie pulled up around her face. Luna. She hadn't noticed the camera. She hadn't even looked up. But the footage was enough for detectives to begin building a case slowly, methodically. They didn't move yet. They watched. They waited. They wanted her to believe she was safe. Because sometimes, when you think the danger has passed, you start to get reckless. And Luna was getting reckless. While Will sank deeper into morning, she was savoring every second. To the outside world, she wore the mask of grief, but inside, Luna felt something closer to vindication. This was her chance. With Electra gone, Will would eventually have to turn somewhere. And Luna was ready. She had planned this far too long to stop now. It began with a text. "Hi, Will. I know you're hurting. I just want you to know I'm here if you need anything. Even just someone to listen. Simple. Understated. Not too pushy. Just enough to crack the door open." And when Will didn't reply right away, she didn't panic. She sent another 2 days later. "Thinking of you today. Electra meant a lot to so many of us. I can't imagine how hard this is for you." Again, silence. But Luna had patience. She had burned for this literally. And now she was ready to collect. She crafted every message carefully. Just enough warmth. Just enough sorrow. Just enough shared loss to make her seem like an ally, not an opportunist. And eventually, Will responded. "Thanks, Luna. Appreciated." Just that. 6 words. But to Luna, it was a gateway. A sign. Proof that her plan was unfolding exactly as intended. She began to escalate slowly. A phone call here. A coffee left on his porch with a note. Casual appearances at events she knew he might attend. Little reminders of her presence. Little nudges. And then came the moment she'd been waiting for. Will agreed to meet her. They sat across from each other at a quiet cafe in West Hollywood, a place far from the paparazzi and the curious stares. Will looked hollow, barely present. His eyes were red-rimmed, his movements stiff, like he was still moving through the fog of grief. But Luna played her part perfectly. Soft voice, gentle smiles, no pressure. Just someone who cared. "It doesn't make sense," Will said finally, staring into his untouched coffee. "She forgave me. We were trying again. I was going to propose." Luna's stomach twisted, but she didn't let it show. "She loved you so much," she said, reaching out to touch his hand. "She was so lucky to have you." He nodded slowly. "And now she's just gone." Luna leaned in slightly. "You're not alone, Will. You don't have to go through this by yourself." For a brief second, Will squeezed her hand. A reflex. A thank you. But to Luna, it was more. It was confirmation. The future she'd envisioned was still possible if she just kept pushing gently, staying close, always available. Soon, he would see what she'd seen all along. They belonged together. But while Luna focused on weaving herself deeper into Will's broken heart, the investigation was closing in. The footage from the gas station had been enhanced, and a forensic analyst had identified the brand of hoodie worn, a limited edition release from a local boutique. Only 50 sold in the entire city. The store still had the list. Luna's name was on it. Then came the cell phone pings. On the night of the fire, Luna's phone had briefly connected to a cell tower only 2 blocks from Electra's apartment despite Luna insisting she had been home the entire night. Investigators had enough now for a search warrant. They were just waiting for the right time to move. Back in her world, Luna was preparing for what she believed would be a turning point. She had planned to visit Will at his house, uninvited but not unwelcome at least. Not anymore. She had baked something. Put on her softest sweater. Light makeup. Just enough to suggest effort, but still morning. But as she stepped outside her building, 2 unmarked cars pulled up. Luna Jong, one officer called. She froze. We'd like to ask you some questions regarding the fire that occurred at 46 Golden Drive. Please come with us. Will would find out within the hour. He'd get the call. Or maybe he'd see the news. The woman who had comforted him, who had shown up at his darkest moment, was now the primary suspect in the murder of the woman he loved. And Luna. She still hadn't said a word. Because deep inside, even as they took her away, she didn't believe she'd lose. Not yet. She had spent too long crafting this story to watch it fall apart now. There were explanations, coincidences, loopholes. At least, that's what she told herself. But Will wasn't the same man anymore. Electra's death had changed him. Grief had sharpened his instincts, and now, looking back, every kind word Luna had offered felt like a lie wrapped in sympathy. Her texts, her timing, her eyes when she spoke about Electra. It wasn't concern. It was calculation. The question now wasn't if Luna was guilty. It was how far she was willing to go to hide it. And the fire, as tragic as it was, may not be the only one Luna had started. Because secrets like hers don't stay buried forever. And when they ignite, they burn through everything.